There are many things to consider and prepare for on an acreage well before winter sets in, especially if you have livestock. Here are a few things to keep in mind and a few things to keep you busy before the first snowfall of the season. Shelter is a very important need for livestock in the winter. Depending on the type of livestock you have, there are different types of shelter preferred. For example, cattle would not need to be shut up in a building. In fact, it is best that they not be, and that trees or another sort of windbreak is used to protect them from the wind. The important thing for most livestock is to have a shelter that blocks the wind, because the direct contact with the wind is what causes them to get cold and can lead to health problems, sickness, and possibly death. Sheds should have a solid wall to protect against the usual direction of the wind, often on the north side. Part of facility design is making sure you have enough square footage per animal so that they all have adequate space to lie down, eat, drink, etc. Here are some space requirements for goats, beef cattle, sheep, and horses. Bedding is important to keep livestock out of the mud or off of the cold frozen ground if outdoors, and to help manage manure and urine if in a confined area indoors. Some popular types include straw, wood chips, and sawdust. Most livestock would be bedded with wheat straw bales, but horse owners prefer sawdust as bedding in a stall. Clean bedding daily to rid it of manure and urine. This will keep the bedding clean and preserve it for more use, and also help guard against disease. If not managed correctly, bedding can serve as a breeding ground for disease. Livestock must have access to clean, fresh water 24/7. During the winter months, the water source must be open and free of ice. There are different types of water sources you can use. You may have a heated water tank that is an automatic waterer. You may use a tank with a heater. Whatever you choose, make sure that the heat source is functioning properly and that the pipes leading to the waterer, if automatic, are well protected from freezing. If you use a tank or bucket that you must fill each day, be sure to unhook the hose from the hydrant and drain it after each use. Otherwise, it will be frozen when you want to use it next. If watering from a non-heated source, be sure to keep something close by so that you can chop or break the ice to keep the water access open. If you use a submersible or floating tank heater, be sure that the type of heater matches the type of tank you own. There are some for metal tanks, some for the hard plastic tanks, some with guards, and some without. So be sure that the heater matches the tank you have to avoid a costly mistake. For feed, it's wise to know about how much you will need for the winter months, and ideally have this stored for use. If that's not practical for you, have as much as possible stored at or close to where it will be needed. A bad winter storm or power outage could present a real challenge to find feed, as there may be a shortage. It may also be a challenge to get it where it needs to go, to the livestock, if there is severe drifting. So best to be prepared and have most of it handled before the winter. Another thing to discuss here is feed storage. It's important to store the feed properly. Try to reduce the amount of exposure to moisture and to rodents. For hay, if no barn space is available, covering it with a tarp is a viable option. For grains, it may be best to purchase a barrel or some other container where rodents and other things cannot get into it. Are your fences fixed and ready to handle your livestock? Fencing is one of those projects that is never ending. It really does require year-round maintenance in order to keep livestock in. This is also important so that you're a good neighbor, and even more importantly, so that you contain your livestock to avoid costly damage to crops, yards, roadways, and vehicles. Maintaining fence can be particularly challenging when deer run through it or when a snowstorm comes, so it is best to make it a routine to check around it regularly. What type of fence is best? For goats, the fence should be 4 foot tall, but 6 foot will protect against predators. Avoid barbed wire. Consider using a strand of electric wire at the top and bottom of the outermost property fence. A woven wire or electric fence should keep sheep confined. For horses, a wood, cable, or steel fence, such as high tensile fence, will work. Do not use barbed wire. A 5-strand barbed wire or electric fence is often used for cattle. If you will be using an electric fence on pasture this winter, this is a great time to double check that there are no weeds, grass, or anything else touching the fence to ground it out. Also, if you are planning to move electric fence, set your post before the ground is frozen. While this list may seem long, please know it is also not all-inclusive. This can certainly vary by which species of livestock you choose to keep or your property in general. However, this does provide ideas for a starting point so that you are well prepared long before the first snowstorm sets in. I'm Sara Ellicott, Extension Educator for the University of Nebraska-Lincoln.